Hello students. So earlier this week, we had you all submit various questions for us to ask various CAPS professionals, CAPS therapists, just to help you all, obviously during this very difficult time, as well as with your finals and your academics before we go into the summer. So I'm just going to go ahead and let these CAPS therapists briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into your questions.
Hi everybody, my name is Jacqueline Vital. I am one of the CAPS counselors at Cal State Fullerton, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Hi, my name is Julie Meisels. I'm one of the staff counselors at CAPS also, and I am a licensed psychologist.
Hey everybody, my name is Megan Bonning. I'm also a licensed therapist at the CAPS Center.
Great, okay, and I'll just go ahead and right into our questions. Our first one, how would you recommend students find motivation while they're in quarantine?
So for this one, I think it's important that students acknowledge, first of all, that it's difficult to find motivation during this time, especially during quarantine, just because we don't really have a lot of structure of school and work. And so to stay motivated during this time, I think it's important that we try to mirror our old routine as much as possible. Our brain likes familiarity. So if we can reestablish a routine that's similar to what it was before this pandemic, it would be a lot easier to get into the swing of things. Some things to do every day, I know that I do is, get up every morning, get dressed, take a shower, make your bed. Those are all things that kind of send this signal to my brain that I'm ready to show up for the day.
I think if I were to add to that, I would just say that that also it's important to be kind to ourselves. There's a lot of pressure right now to be very productive, that if we're not doing something extraordinary with our time, that somehow it's like a waste. But I think that right now it is okay to stick to the basics, that sending those really basic signals to our brain, like Jackie's saying about getting up at the same time, making your bed, having some semblance of a routine, that creates a lot more structure and comfort for us during this time.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing I would add to that is I know it's hard for many of us because some of the things that we were planning on doing, whether it be this summer or graduation, have kind of gone away. And so really to focus kind of on your long-term goals. If you are really interested in medical school, even though it may be 3 years away, you still want to put time and energy into studying because that's an important long-term goal. And for most of us, our long-term goals are still important to us, even though in the short run, things are changing a lot.
Great, and kind of leading in from what Julie was just talking about, specifically, how can students find motivation when their current end goal has kind of been interrupted, in particular for students who are mostly looking forward to graduation at this point?
I think this kind of goes back to what I was saying before in terms of kind of you want to step back and look at the things that are of value to you, the things that are most important to you. And although you may not have a graduation ceremony, you've still really accomplished a lot and have graduated college, and to really acknowledge that and celebrate it. In terms of motivating yourself for goals, again, most of us have long-term goals and things that we're looking forward to in the future, and they may be postponed a little bit for some things, but most of us still really value their goals and moving towards those in whatever way we can, whether it be planning a vacation and planning it online, whether it be planning a future party with friends, just really trying to plan things, but they may be a little further out than we thought.
Great.
I also want to bring up, just before we move away from this, that it's disappointing to not have a very climactic traditional end to your college career. But you're going to get that diploma. You're going to see your name on that diploma, and no pandemic is going to be able to take that away from you. I really encourage you to be proud of how far you've come and what you've accomplished. Because this is going to be setting you up for the longer term goals, right? Like, you don't go to college just for the piece of paper, or else that's a heckin' expensive piece of paper. You go to college for the doors it opens for you and the opportunities that come after. So keep your eye on the prize, and congratulations.
Okay, for students in general, I know we talked about a couple of general techniques like sticking to your daily routines, reflecting on what you've genuinely accomplished, but for all students, are there any further techniques you'd like to recommend just in terms of being able to stay focused, being able to reach the goals that they decide are currently important to them?
I think that, you know, the more steps you can take, even if they're virtual, to move towards your goals, you have more of an opportunity, of course, to get organized around those goals, to figure out what you may need to be doing when we return to campus, or what you need to be doing to get ready for something. You can still work on things at home and getting yourself all set so that when we are back out in the world, you kind of have your ducks in a row and are ready to jump in.
How do you recommend students best deal with feeling lonely? Maybe it's been difficult for them to connect with friends, connect with their peers, and like they're having trouble figuring out how to deal with these feelings, especially because they're more isolated than they may be traditionally used to.
I think loneliness is one of the biggest things that is coming up for people right now. Human beings are wired for connection with other people. And there's only so much connection that goes on when you're having to talk to somebody through a screen, right? There's a lot of communication that's nonverbal, and you lose a lot of that when you communicate just through technology. So if you're feeling lonely and bored, frustrated, angry right now, I think that's okay. I think it's really common and normal to be feeling that way. That being said, there are things that we can do to cope with our loneliness. Reaching out to friends as much as possible, reaching out to family a couple times a day, focusing on things that make you feel connected, not only to other people, but also to yourself. Even if it's something like, cooking, building a puzzle, if you do have energy for a new hobby, go for it. Connecting with like a virtual book club, watching movies with friends online, anything you can do to reach out as much as possible.
I think too, the other thing that I've certainly been motivated to do is to either foster or adopt pets at this time. To have someone furry hanging out with you can also be really helpful in terms of loneliness. It also gives us all some purpose too, because there are things we need to take care of when we have an animal. So those things I think can also be helpful. And/or, there are also a bunch of virtual support groups, and those things can be something you can connect with even beyond family and friends.
Yeah, I agree. I would say something that has definitely helped me connect with others, because as humans, like Megan said, we do crave that connection with other people, is starting a book club. It's been really nice to meet every week, have something to look forward to, knowing that there's something that I have to do, holding myself accountable, because other people are also relying on me to, finish reading that book. That's been really helpful to kind of bring back that connection and bring back that normalcy in the midst of all of this.
Great. We kind of talked about a couple different ways, like watching movies, starting online book clubs. But so if we want to talk about that a little bit further, what are other ways for students to connect beyond just a couple Zoom calls, just general conversational things? What are some activities that students could engage in?
Yeah, I think that, we tend to forget about this, but just making a phone call or writing an email or handwriting a letter to someone, that could be really, really meaningful right now. I've seen really cool videos going around online of people making care packages and dropping them off for their neighbors or their friends. And I think that's a really cool way to put some intention into something, express gratitude for another person, and be able to connect on a platform that's not virtual.
There's so many things that are available for us to make, letters special. There's new stationery. There's so many things that we can do that we otherwise might not have done, just because before all of this, I feel like we've just been so caught up with everything that we have to do. And I think this time is a good time. If we can find some positiveness in this, it's a good time for us to slow down. And in slowing down, we can build those connections. And like Megan said, write letters, do something creative, find fun stationery, and do something that's a little different and out of our comfort zone, but can bring someone else some happiness.
Great.
Also, I want to bring up that, as long as we're within the state guidelines of social distancing, it's okay to hang out outside together. If you're in a park and you're able to sit, 6 feet apart, by all means, go for a social distance walk with a friend, you know, go for a bike ride, because you're probably not going to be riding that close to each other anyway.
Specific to the campus, what are some resources that CSUF has to offer students to utilize during this pandemic?
So I think we have a lot of really good resources. One of the newest ones is you@fullerton.edu, and it's a fantastic site where you can go on and get all kinds of additional resources. Students put in their name, and I think it's their date of birth, and that gives you access to all kinds of different resources, games, etc. So that would be one thing I'd really encourage every student to check out. The other thing is we have CAPS wellness workshops online also. So things about like sleep, stress management, kind of mood management. We have those workshops online, and you can go to those as well. We also have the ASI site itself is going to have not only this, but I think other videos that will be up. The Dean of Students office is also doing a video tomorrow to talk more about stress management and things like that. So that should be coming to everyone soon. There are also some webinars being put on by the DIRC Center, our diversity centers. And so those should be available as well.
Titan Well also has some things that they're doing on their website. They've got cooking classes and just a bunch of like wellness things that are like lighthearted and fun. In addition, the Student Rec Center is having virtual workouts. So you can log in with your, I don't know if you have to make a separate login or if you just log in with your campus website login, but they've got, you know, virtual workouts that you can log on and take right from home.
Great. What is the best way or a couple ways students can check in and support their friends and loved ones during this time?
So a lot of what we had talked about already, you know, there is Zoom, of course, FaceTime. We didn't talk about something fun that I've been seeing is a lot of people are having, you know, dance parties through FaceTime. And there is something, there's an app I think called House Party, and that's really fun. People can play games and still connect that way. Letters and cards. And something that we talked about too, which I think is very important in supporting each other in this time, is asking each other with intention and genuinely wanting to know how people are doing. You know, oftentimes we ask people, how are you? And it's always a generic, I'm good. But during this time, I think acknowledging that it's okay if we have feelings of anxiety, and it's okay if we have feelings of uncertainty and just not knowing what's going to happen. And it's okay to talk about that with people that we have good rapport with, because I'm sure that a lot of us are feeling a lot of similar emotions about this.
To piggyback off of that, I think a lot of times what makes people feel comfortable to tell you how they're really doing is if you also share how you're really doing. I think there's a big difference if I ask Jackie, like, how are you doing really? Spill the tea, I want to know. And me leading with, Jackie, I've been feeling a little uncertain. Like, it's scary times out there. Like, when I go to the grocery store, I get anxious. She's probably going to be like, yeah, girl, me too. I think
Right.
There's a lot of power in like recognizing like that you're feeling some kind of way, and it makes it that much easier for the person that you're trying to connect with to tell you.
Great. Beyond acknowledging the validity of feeling stressed out and feeling a little anxious, what are some techniques, resources, tips for students to reduce certain feelings of stress and anxiety?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. There's a lot that, to be honest, right now, everything that's happening is we're all feeling very fear-based right now. Maybe not every single person, but as a society, the collective we right now, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of panic. And I think that in a way, this is a very traumatic time for us. And I think that the way that people react is a very common reaction to a very uncommon situation. So yes, there's a lot of validity behind the way that we're feeling. And I think that if we just if we're able to understand that there are only certain things that we have control over, and be able to focus on the things that we have control over, that helps so much. There's not much we can do to control how and when the economy reopens or what's going to happen next semester at Fullerton. But we can control, if we comply with social distancing, how well we wash our hands, how well we connect with the people in our lives. I think that just reminding ourselves what we do and don't have control over can be a good first step.
Completely agree with that. I think that's such a good point. And I think about, when we are in a panic, I feel that when we see others in panic, I feel like we get into a panic, right? And then this kind of reminds me of what was going on in the beginning of this pandemic with the whole toilet paper situation. I feel like so many people were hoarding toilet paper because everybody was panicking over toilet paper. And this kind of goes back to, if we just take a step back, right, and we take a breath and we understand, or we try to realize what we are panicking about, and what Megan said, what we have control over, that will help so much with our anxiety. And just asking ourselves, is this thought helpful right now? Is it helpful for me to panic over something that I just don't have control over? That seems to be very helpful.
Yeah, and just to really piggyback on what all of you are saying, I think one of the things that's been most valuable for me is to stop overexposing myself to news. I think that can just be absolutely overwhelming. And of course, with the 24-hour news cycle, it's really easy to get pulled in when we're home all the time. So that's one thing I would say, really narrow down how much you're using the news. I also really like, there is a good news app that you can get on your phone where all the news you get is very positive and hopeful. And I think I would encourage everyone to get that, so that if you're tempted to go back and look at the news again, that you look at that. I think too, just remembering that even when we do one small thing that we have control over and we accomplish it, we feel better. Whether that be the laundry or whether that be going for a walk, but focusing on one thing at a time and being in the present moment can be so helpful. And the last thing is too, I don't know, many of you may have seen on social media and other places, people talk about a gratitude journal. I think that's the other thing that can be really helpful is, I know for me at the end of each day, I have a journal by my bed and I will write down 2 things that I'm really grateful for. Some other people create a really cool looking jar or box and decorate it. And inside they put pieces of paper each day that says the things they're grateful for. And when you're feeling really down, it's a good time to open up that jar or dump that box and take a look at those things. But to really do that on a regular basis can be helpful.
Along with that, Julie had mentioned being present. And I think that's so important during this time for us to remain present in the moment. Something that I try to practice every day is what I call fact checking. And what that basically is telling myself, if I am not in actual physical danger at this moment, I'm actually okay. And, if I'm physically feeling okay right now and my family is okay right now, we're okay. And even if symptoms may be asymptomatic, or maybe if we don't know what's going on at this present moment, I know that I am okay. And it's so important to remind ourselves of that, because it's so easy to get tangled into future what if circumstances.
Great. What about for students who may unfortunately be quarantined in an environment that is not super accepting of their personal identities? How should they most effectively deal with that?
Yeah, I think this is one of the other things that I've been thinking about lately, is that there are people who are quarantined in unsafe locations. And I think that honestly, a lot of the advice is going to be on a case-by-case basis. However, there are a lot of resources out there for people, whether it's identity-based or something else, but there are a lot of really great online support groups. I think this is a great time to reach out more and lean on your friends who are really supportive of your identity. There is an LGBTQ hotline. If you look up the Trevor Project, they do really great work with LGBTQ youth I think primarily under 25, although right now I wouldn't be surprised if they're just like kind of supporting anybody that calls in. Also, I would really encourage people to connect with our DIRC centers. They do a lot of really, really wonderful work with our students.
I think too, for people who are around or are experiencing domestic violence and things like that, in these kind of unsafe homes, there is a domestic violence hotline. Also, there's a place called Laura's House, which has all kinds of resources for individuals struggling with domestic violence, including things like legal advocacy and counseling resources, financial assistance. So I really direct people to check out Laura's House website. And for anyone who's experiencing kind of online or even kind of at-home bullying, there are some great bullying hotlines too, where you can reach out and find supportive people kind of to help you get through things right now.
Pivoting a little bit to a different point, what are recommendations for students to stay physically healthy during this pandemic?
I'd say first and foremost, staying active as much as we can, right? Not exercising and not staying active, it really causes us to have low energy. And having low energy, of course, leads to low motivation. And during this time, we need energy and we need motivation. And so along that, something that has helped a lot of my clients is, you know, when you're ready to go work out, and when you give yourself a designated time of the day to work out based on your schedule, you put on your regular workout clothes. Putting on that regular workout clothes kind of brings me back to the point I brought earlier of putting in that normal routine back into your schedule. And just putting on your clothes makes you feel like I'm ready to show up for the day, I'm ready to be active. And alongside that, there are so many free workouts. Like Megan said, the Rec Center offers that, as well as YouTube has an abundance of free workout videos that's so helpful to stay active during this time.
I think another piece of physical health is, of course, what we fuel our bodies with. And it's really important during this time, too, that we continue to feed our bodies a balanced diet, right? So not too much, not too little of any one food group. I think I've seen a lot on social media lately about how just since we're naturally a little less active as a society right now, that we should therefore, you know, alter our diet accordingly. But I really want to encourage people to continue to eat a balanced diet because I mean, heck, if you think about it, even plants that never move their entire lives, they stay in the same place and they still need food to survive, right? So eat a balanced diet and make sure that the movement that you're doing in this time, all the workouts that you're doing, they honor both your body and your mind.
Okay, and can seniors and students still use CAP services over the summer? And what does that look like if they can?
Right, it's a really good question. So seniors who are graduating, we can provide help finding off-campus providers for you. So if you reach out to the counseling center, we can get you hooked up with our case managers who can help you look at different options for counseling off campus. If you are returning, in the fall, you are still available. You can still get our services through the summer. So CAPS is still seeing students over the summer. And you would contact the counseling center and let us know if you needed to either start services or you wanted to continue services. You can talk with your counselor. And the counseling center will continue to provide, like I said, individual sessions, crisis sessions, and outreach over the summer. So it's really for the seniors. And if you're graduating and not going to be back in the fall, we really want to encourage you to get a case management appointment so we can help you figure out what your options are. Everyone who is remaining and was in classes in the spring can continue to receive services over the summer.
And then what habits should students try to avoid during the quarantine? We've talked a lot about different strategies for students, things that they can do. What should students not do?
I think that for this question, balance is the name of the game. Too much of anything is a bad thing, right? So I would say probably the ones that would be the most likely to be pitfalls here is sleeping a lot. There's nothing wrong with sleeping because your brain really needs it, right? That's during the time that your brain consolidates memories. It helps, it helps you to remember what you've learned instead of just shoving it into short-term memory and forgetting it after finals. Sleep is really important. However, you want to aim for that sweet spot, 7 to 8 hours. If you're sleeping a lot, it can backfire. Overuse of alcohol or substances, similarly, too much of anything is a bad thing. I would encourage people to, keep up hygiene. So, avoid letting hygiene slip, stuff like that. But yeah, I think that balance is really important.
I think a big thing that with being home so much, I think that social media has definitely been an easy distraction for a lot of students. And it's usually the first thing that we pick up when we need a break from reality. We pick up our phone and we're just mindlessly scrolling through social media. So I think that that's something that we should be mindful of and something that we should try to avoid during this time. Instead, we can allow ourselves to connect with friends and family through social media, but definitely maybe setting a timer to put down your phone after you've been scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or any other social media outlet that you might find yourself on there for quite a long time without even realizing it.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is to kind of piggyback on eating a balanced diet, but if you can keep your normal meal routine, so whatever that was before, to kind of continue that, I think going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time, as well as eating your meals at the same time, again, gives us a sense of structure back, and it also helps our body understand kind of we're still in the groove of doing our life day to day. I think the other thing is being sure that you get up and move. Even if you're home, I hope you're going outside, walking, getting some exposure to vitamin D, but just getting up and moving. Don't sit all day. I know it's really tempting, but it's great to get up and move your body as much as possible, whether it be to a video or while you're chatting or doing FaceTime, but just get up and move around.
In the interest of students still staying informed, I know we talked a little bit about consuming media and consuming news intelligently. But what are, given all these constant updates and changes, students can feel nervous. What are techniques for students to stay informed and keep that stress level manageable?
One of my recommendations and the thing that I've done is to really watch news once a day, whatever day that is or whatever time I choose, and to keep that really consistent. I would also say if you're not feeling great, if you're feeling super anxious, that's not the time to watch the news. I would wait until you can kind of feel a little calmer. We don't want our brain, when we feel out of control, to have more information about how we're out of control. So to really just make sure you're in a decent mindset to hear the news. I also think, I know sometimes we want a sense of control, so that's why we watch the news. It doesn't always give us that. So just limiting it really to one time a day, I think can be super helpful with that. Also, just be mindful of the news that you're watching. Do you feel like it's giving you credible information? If not, you might want to choose a different news source that you feel gives you more credible information too.
Okay, and then just to wrap things up with our last written question here, how can I help if I have younger siblings or if I have children understand the pandemic in an appropriate way?
Right, so one of the things my colleagues here talked about was it being important for parents or older siblings to make sure you're managing your own anxiety first, because the truth is kids are super smart and they really pick up on all our anxieties. And so managing your own would really be the first step to that. The other thing is to just kind of get a sense of where your young person is age-wise, and to find a source that would help give them information and understand the pandemic that's appropriate for their age group. So if you've got really little kids around you, then Sesame Street and how they talk about the pandemic might be a really great option. Certainly Disney also has some information about the pandemic that's explained in a really good way, age appropriate, sometimes with cool cartoons. So I'd really encourage you to kind of seek out those sources. And also, it's fine to ask kids about what they've heard or what they think about what's going on around them. I think a lot of kids have thoughts, but they wouldn't necessarily say them to you unless you ask. So that would be one of the other things I'd really encourage you to do.
Kind of going off of that, most kids, when they feel upset or scared about something, they won't come to you and say, hey, adult in my life, I feel upset and scared. Can we talk? They tell you that they have a stomach ache. They maybe melt down a little bit more. Maybe they start to like throw things or fight back, or they just say no a lot. You'll see it in other ways, but they won't come up to you and say, I'm stressed. Can you help me? So I think a lot of times we tend to like shy away from asking kids, what have you heard about this? Because we don't want to worry them. Go ahead and take that risk, because I'm guessing that they've noticed the masks. They've noticed things are closed. They've noticed that they're not going to school anymore. They know something's up. So just ask them what they've heard, and that way you get to clear up any misconceptions. You get to have an open and honest conversation, and you get to know where their head's at, so that the next time they're melting down, you already have a clue what they might be upset about.
Okay, and lastly, are there any other resources that might have not been able to come during this conversation that you'd like to recommend students look into?
Well, I think one of the things that most of the students that I work with have found helpful are a couple of the apps, one of them being the Calm app or the Headspace app. Many of my students really like and find helpful. There's also something called the COVID Coach, which can be accessed to kind of help you, coach you through certain things and certain tasks. So that might be something. And my favorite one is Happify, Happify. And they have just some really good YouTube videos. They also have some really good speakers and suggestions and quotes that I think are really uplifting.
I've also heard really good things about an app called Insight Timer. I haven't used it myself, but I keep hearing about it. Also, if students watching this have the Apple Watch, there is a built-in program on there called Breathe, and it'll lead you through deep breathing exercises. Deep breathing is one of my favorite ways to calm down anxiety. I don't think we talked about it specifically, but a lot of times when you get anxious, you'll notice your heart start to beat kind of fast, and your thoughts kind of start going really fast. And when you breathe really deep and slow, which is what this Breathe thing does on your wrist, it actually cuts off some of the oxygen going to your heart and brain, and it forces everything to take a step back and calm down. So whether you have that app or you don't, I would definitely recommend taking a few deep, slow breaths, like maybe one breath every 6 seconds or so, for a couple of minutes at a time. You'll be shocked at how different you feel at the end of a few minutes.
I think that's a great point, Megan. And it's also on Fitbit. They have a Breathe one too. So
I love that. And I feel like in this discussion, we didn't really get to talk about the benefits of deep breathing as much. But I think it's a coping skill that often gets overlooked, but it's so, so important. And to utilize other free things, YouTube has so many deep breathing or belly breathing. Just you can type that in and they're all guided. And I think guided is so important. Guided is somebody's actually there telling you what to do step by step on how to do it. And I think that as a student, I know when I was a student, somebody would tell me to deep breathe and I would just kind of laugh, I breathe all the time. Why would you tell me to breathe? But I would encourage you just to try it out more than once, because there's a reason why we say it's so important. And when we take a deep breath and we slow down our body, our brain gets a signal. And the signal in our brain says, their body is slowing down. My mind should probably slow down too, because mind, body, and soul is connected. And that's why breathing is so important.
Well,
if you're really into meditation and stuff like that, I would also recommend looking on YouTube for the loving kindness meditation. That's really closely tied into gratitude. And the more we practice gratitude, it's actually well researched. It's linked to lower anxiety levels, lower depression levels, better relationships. There's so much that I could say about gratitude, but I know we're about out of time. So just trust me on this, practice gratitude and look up the loving kindness meditation.
I agree.
Yes.
Okay, well, I want to thank you all very, very much for sharing your time with us. Students, please make sure to check out both the CABS website and u.fullerton.edu to access various resources that'll definitely be helpful for you during this time. And we want to wish you the best of luck with your finals.
Good luck with finals.
Good luck.
Yes. Breathe.